One of the reasons why Brian Norman Jr.'s team turned down the fight with Boots, right, was because they had to agree to fight Boots in Boots' hometown, my home city of Philadelphia, right, Pennsylvania. They turned it down and said, we don't want to go to his backyard. We don't want to compete against him in Philly. We don't want to. Now, I don't know how they think they're going to generate money anywhere else fighting Boots, because I told y'all this before. I'm going to tell you all again, and this is not my opinion. This is a fact. Brian Norman Jr., who is from Atlanta, Georgia, never fought in his own hometown in the main event, ever. So if we don't know if you can sell any tickets from a business perspective in your own backyard, how can you complain about going to someone else's backyard who has a proven record in Philly of selling tickets and making and generating money? The second reason, I call it an excuse, but the second reason why Brian Norman Jr.'s manager, as you just heard him say, turned down the fight was because it's not like Boots is coming to the table with something of significance, of value, basically. They're coming to the table with the same thing. In other words, this Boots is the IBF champion. He has one title. And Brian Norman Jr. is a world champion, and he has one title. Now, because Boots won last night, not only do Boots have one title, but as of last night, Boots have two titles. Do you know what that means? Now that Boots have two titles, when it's time for Brian Norman Jr., his representation, Boots and his representation to get together and negotiate, do y'all know what that means now? That means that Boots' representation, which they already had more leverage from the very beginning of the initial negotiations in September, now they're going to have greater leverage because Boots is coming to the table with two belts to Brian Norman Jr.'s one. Not only that, it gets worse from here. Not only that, but the first time there were three offers. I don't want to run the whole playback because a lot of people already know this. But remember, I'm opening up the live podcast for a new audience on Facebook. They may not know what's going on. I got to catch everybody up to speed because we family and everybody need to be on the same page. Now, with that being said, there was three offers made to Brian Norman Jr. by Boots' representation. This is not an opinion. These are facts. The first offer, $1 million. $1 million to fight Boots in Philadelphia. Both belts on the line. His team said, no, that's not enough money. Boots' representation, the promoter, Eddie Hearn, comes back a second time. What about $1.2 million? They turned it down again. No, that's not enough money. You got to bring the numbers up higher. Boots' representation, Eddie Hearn, the promoter, comes back a third and final time and say, this is my final offer. $1.75 million. So on the final offer, let's be clear on this, final offer, Boots' representation, Eddie Hearn, the promoter of Matchroom Promotions, came back and offered an additional $525,000. Additional. And Brian Norman, through his management team, turned it down. There's several perspectives. I gave the perspective before. I'm going to do it again. I always ask people this question. Is $1.5 million a lot of money? Some people say yes, depending on who you ask, and some people say no, depending on who you ask, right? Let's put this in proper perspective. I have people all over the world that watch this podcast and support this channel. Let's just condense it to an average American citizen. If an average American citizen earned $50,000 per year, right? I'm talking about through their occupation. If an American citizen earned and gross $50,000 per year, let's do the math. It will take that American citizen 30 years to accumulate $1.5 million. Is my math correct? Let's do a math check real quick. Let's see if we can do it, man. Can somebody in the comments section or the chat just say yes or no? I just want to make sure my math is correct. Yes or no? Let me run it back one more time. $50,000 per year. Annual salary will be equivalent to earning and grossing $1.5 million in 30 years. Yes or no? Is my math correct? I don't want my math to be off. Y'all know this. Some of y'all that's the family. The family know this. The family know this. Some of y'all might not know this. My favorite two subjects in school from elementary to high school was math and girls. My favorite two subjects in school, elementary school all the way up to high school, was math and girls. I guess that's why some people call me Mac Marty. Anyway, the point I'm making is this, Ty and JSir72. It will take an American citizen 30 years to generate $1.5 million off of a $50,000 per year salary. But it would have took Brian Norman Jr. 30 minutes to generate $1.5 million to fight Boots Ennis and become unified with 2 belts in the division. I'm going to let y'all process that for a second. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. It would take an American citizen 30 years to accumulate and gross and earn $1.5 million off of a $50,000 per year salary. But it would have took Brian Norman Jr. 30 minutes to generate that same money, those same earnings of $1.5 million to fight Boots Ennis and become unified in a division with 2 belts. Lord have mercy. What kind of representation do they have? Everybody know at this point, in boxing and out of boxing, on YouTube and off of YouTube, family, friends, associates, and non alike know that I have a lot of experience being a licensed professional boxing manager in multiple states here in America. If Brian Norman Jr. were my client, if Brian Norman Jr. were my client, and I was representing Brian Norman Jr. as his manager, man, we would be having a totally different conversation right now. It's Sunday, so I can preach, can I? Oh, okay. It's Sunday, right? It's Sunday, special edition here. You ain't gonna find this nowhere else. That's why I'm glad y'all here. The personality is on point today. All I'm saying is, how can you turn down 1.75? That's all I'm at. 1.75. How can you turn down $1.75 million against an opponent that you believe you can knock out? on the streets, on the block, they call that an easy lick. That's for my audience from the street. You know, I got audience members from all over the country, all over the world, and in every different walk of life that support and watch this channel. So I have to entertain everybody. I have to make an appeal to everybody. People from the streets watch this channel. Wanna know why? Because they remember when I used to be in the streets. People in boxing watch this channel because they remember how I used to be in boxing. People at work watch the channel. I can go on and on in the different environments, in the different communities that I represent. The point that I'm making is I have to appeal to all. They call that hustling backwards on the block. I'm just trying to figure out how can you turn. Let me give it to you like this. Me and my man Lucky was talking earlier, and we broke it down like this. And I have to say this because I want to appeal to everybody to make it understandable and comprehensible to others. If somebody was trying to rob a bank, this is the negative. I'm going to give you a negative. I'm going to give you a positive illustration. Negative illustration. Somebody wanted to rob a bank, right? They realized that it's $100,000 in the vault. But it's 10 security officers with Kevlar bulletproof vests on and assault rifles that's guarding the vault. And then there's a bank around the corner. There's $1.75 million in that vault. But it's a security guard who's unarmed and 70 years old. And there's no backup on the scene. It's only one 70-year-old security guard. No Kevlar bulletproof vest on. He's unarmed. And no backup on the scene. You mean to tell me that the bank robber is going to choose in his or her right state of mind that they're going to risk their freedom and life to rob that bank with only $100,000 in the vault with 10 security officers on deck, Kevlar bulletproof vests, backup, and assault rifles, opposed to just going around the corner with his $1.75 million in the vault. One security guard, 70 years old, no backup on the scene, no firearms or weapons, unarmed, no Kevlar bulletproof vest. I'm just asking the question. That's all. I know that might be a terrible analogy, Cornelius. It just makes sense to me. That's the negative. I'm just saying, that's the negative. That's for my audience members that's still on the block. We gotta show them love because they support the channel. I'm praying for y'all. Get off the block, y'all. If you in the streets, I'm praying for you. But right now, for teachable moment purposes, for the scope of what I'm talking about right now, all I'm saying is it seemed easier. Why am I bringing that up? Because Brian Norman Jr., let me bring it back home. Brian Norman Jr., in his last fight, in the previous fight before that, Victor, made between $100,000 and $150,000. In other words, he reached his maximum earning potential. And the fighters that he fought was supposed to be tough competition compared to Boots. I'm saying compared to Boots because, you know, Brian Norman Sr., his dad said that Boots is an easy lick. In other words, is that his son will knock Boots out cold with no problem. He's an easy opponent. So you mean to tell me you turned down $1.75 million to fight a person you can knock out and defeat easily? But you chose instead to fight two fighters who were tougher tougher competition for less money? What church do they do? I was going to say where they do that at, and then I was going to say what church do they do that at? But Marvin Sapp told the people to close the door. I think Marvin Sapp got 40,000 in Marvin Sapp got 40,000 in 5 minutes. And you mean to tell me that don't have nothing to do with it? Nothing I'm talking about. It's just Sunday, y'all. Marvin Sapp, right? He generated like 40,000 in 5 minutes in the church. And you mean to tell me Brian Norman Jr. turns down 1.75 million that he could have made within 30 minutes or less by knocking Boots out, instead to go fight and make $100,000 for tougher competition? Where they do this at, y'all? I'm just asking. Because his manager said that after they finished allocating all of the funds, if they would have accepted the $1.75 million, and after, Brian Norman Jr. paid his expenses, having multiple managers, and then he has Bob Arum, Top Rank Promotions, as a promoter, so he had to give a piece of his compensation, 30%, I believe, 20 to 30% of his compensation to Bob Arum, the promoter, and then 20 to 30% or 33 and a third, which is the maximum, as us managers know about, to manager and representation, and then taxes, and all of these different things. The third reason why they turned the fight down and declined the third offer is because after all the expenses are going to be paid for, this is according to his representation, don't get mad at me, Brian Norman Jr. will only end up with $800,000. If a young man in his mid-20s can't live off of $800,000 within 6 months, and I'm saying within 6 months because I expect for the management and representation to have him back in the ring within 6 months had he beat Boots, right? Okay. If a young man in his early 20s can't live off of $800,000 within 6 months, there's something wrong, not just with the program, but also with money management. There's something wrong with that picture here.